Under the blinding glow of the studio lights, Alan Jackson adjusted his hat, and gave a polite nod to the audience as they applauded his entrance. The familiar twang of country music played softly from the band in the corner, setting the tone for what should have been a relaxed morning chat. But anyone who had seen The View long enough knew. Calm never lasted long on that stage. Joy Behar was already perched in her chair, her expression sharp, her smile polite but laced with curiosity. She had a stack of cards in front of her, and somewhere in there lay the question that would ignite the moment the internet would replay endlessly. Alan took his seat, tipping his hat slightly toward Whoopi and Sunny, both smiling in welcome. He was a country legend, the kind of guest who usually brought stories of small-town values, music, and heart. But this morning, something hung in the air, a tension that no one had yet named. Joy wasted no time. After a few pleasantries about his new tour and the success of his latest album, she leaned forward and asked about something more controversial. His outspoken comments about the state of the music industry and his views on modern culture. Alan's blue eyes narrowed just slightly. He smiled that calm, Southern smile that had charmed fans for decades and said he was just old-fashioned, that he believed in a world where songs told the truth and people respected one another. The audience clapped softly, but Joy wasn't finished. She pressed him, asking whether his old-fashioned beliefs also applied to modern social progress. Her tone was careful but cutting, laced with the kind that could sting if you weren't in on the joke. Alan chuckled at first, trying to brush it off, but Joy kept going. She mentioned a lyric from one of his older songs, suggesting it reflected outdated ideals. Alan's smile faded. He sat up straighter, adjusting his microphone. "Mum," he said softly, "those lyrics come from a place of honesty. You write about the world you live in, not the one you wish people would accept without question." The audience murmured. Joy smiled, but her eyes flickered with a mix of irritation and amusement. "But don't you think," she said, tapping her card, "that maybe the world's changed, Alan? That maybe some of what used to be called traditional just doesn't fit anymore?" Alan's fingers tapped against his knee, a slow rhythmic beat that matched the rising tension. "Maybe," he replied. "But sometimes the world changes in ways that ain't for the better." That line landed heavy. Some audience members clapped, others stayed silent. Joy tilted her head, her expression sharpening. "Are you saying progress is bad?" she asked, her voice a touch higher, her words pointed. Alan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Depends on what you call progress." Whoopi leaned in, trying to smooth things over, but it was too late. The crowd could feel the clash brewing. Alan wasn't angry yet, but he was holding his ground, the calm before a storm that was now impossible to avoid. Joy crossed her arms, leaning forward with that familiar glint, the one that said she wasn't backing down. "Well, I think the world's a better place when people move forward, not back, don't you?" Alan's jaw tightened. "Mom, I make music about life, not politics. But if you think the only way to move forward is to forget where you came from, then maybe that's why so many folks feel lost these days." The audience gasped, half cheering, half stunned. Joy's expression froze. For a moment the air crackled with silence. Then she laughed, not kindly, but sharply. "Well," she said, "I guess nostalgia sells better than reality." Alan's eyes lifted toward her, steady and unflinching. "Maybe it sells because people are tired of being told they're wrong for remembering what used to matter." The studio was no longer laughing. Whoopi tried again to change the subject, mentioning his tour. But Joy wasn't done. "Alan," she said, her tone sharper now, "you're on The View. We talk about the real world here, not fairy tales about the good old days." Alan leaned forward slightly, his voice low but powerful. "And I'm telling you about the real world where I come from. Where folks still shake hands, look each other in the eye, and don't treat respect like it's something to argue about." The crowd erupted in applause this time, real, spontaneous, divided but loud. Joy sat back, stunned by the reaction. Whoopi gave a quick laugh to ease the moment, but Alan had already made his point. The producers shifted nervously behind the cameras, uncertain whether to cut to commercial. Joy tried to recover, forcing a smile. "Well, it's a talk show," she said, "and we love a good conversation, even when it gets spirited." Alan chuckled, but this time it was dry, controlled. "Conversation's fine," he said, standing abruptly. "But when a man can't share his heart without being turned into a headline, maybe it's time to end the talk." The room went silent again. Joy blinked, surprised. "What?" she said, half laughing. "Are you walking off?" Alan adjusted his hat, looked around the audience, and said quietly, No ma'am. I'm just leaving before I say something that'll sound worse out of context. Whoopi raised her hands, calling out, Alan, come on now. But he smiled, tipped his hat toward her, and gave the audience one last nod. Y'all have a good morning, he said. The band didn't play, the cameras hesitated. The audience erupted into mixed applause and murmurs as he stepped off the stage, calm and unhurried, his boots echoing across the studio floor. Joy tried to laugh it off, tossing a quip about thin-skinned cowboys. But her voice trembled slightly. Whoopi gave her a look, a silent reminder that maybe this one had gone too far. When the show cut to commercial, the studio was buzzing. Producers rushed after Alan, trying to smooth things over, but he just smiled and kept walking, his silhouette fading down the hallway. Minutes later, clips began to surface online. Shaky phone videos from audience members, headlines forming before the next segment had even aired. Alan Jackson storms off the View after clash with Joy Behar. Social media split in two. Fans hailing him as a man of principle, while critics accused him of being outdated and stubborn. Backstage, Alan paused long enough to glance at his reflection in the mirror. The hat, the denim, the wary eyes. The same man who'd sung about small towns and faith, now stood in a place that didn't understand either. He took a deep breath, muttered to himself, "Wes, some stages just ain't meant for me," and walked out into the cool morning air, where the only sound was the quiet hum of the city, and the echo of his own calm dignity.